She walked onto the range like a ghost from the past, quiet, scarred, forgotten. But when 5 perfect shots silenced a team of Navy SEALs, her legend reignited. Riley Quinn, once the military's most precise, unseen marksman, is forced out of the shadows when a former student weaponizes her legacy. This isn't just a return, it's a reckoning. Are you ready to meet the sniper who never misses? Welcome to my channel. I don't wear medals. I don't hang flags. And I sure as hell don't talk about what I did. But I carry every inch of it. Right here, in the way I walk, the way I breathe, and the way I shoot. The name's Riley Quinn, 32 years old. Former long-range recon for a unit that technically doesn't exist. If you ask certain folks up in DC, I never served. But the burn scars on my back and the coordinates etched in my memory say otherwise. I live outside Flagstaff, Arizona now. Small cabin, big sky. Quiet enough that the wind actually has something to say. I work on old motorcycles for cash, hunt elk in the fall, and shoot only when I need to, or when the weight of memory grows too loud to ignore. That morning, I headed out to the Northern Ridge Shooting Club, civilian range just past the old train tracks. Nothing fancy. Steel targets at distance, sand pits to catch your brass. Run by a retired Air Force supply sergeant who made the best damn chili I'd ever had. It was the kind of place where weekend shooters came to burn ammo and swap gear stories. But today, it had more buzz than usual. Some Navy boys were in town for mountain training. Young, clean-cut, too loud for the stillness of the desert. They were there to show off. I could hear it in the clink of mags, the bark of fake laughter. Me? I pulled up in a dusty '94 Bronco, gear tossed in the back like it owed me money. I wore an old denim jacket, cargo pants, and a cap pulled low over my brow. No gear tags. No fancy cases. Just my rifle, broken down and wrapped in an old horse blanket. I felt the eyes before I even stepped onto the gravel. Another wannabe trying to look tough. One of them muttered, "I bet she can't even handle the recoil." Another chuckled. I didn't react. Just walked up to the check-in window and signed my name. Just initials. RQ. The range master nodded. He knew me. Not well, but enough to stay out of my way. They kept talking. "Bet she's here to take selfies with the scope," one of them snorted. But then I rolled up my sleeve to adjust my elbow brace, and everything changed. I didn't even think about the tattoo, hadn't shown it in years. But the heat was rising, and the sleeve slid just enough to reveal the ink etched across my forearm. A stylized hawk wrapped in barbed wire, perched over a triangle of crossed lightning bolts. I caught it in the corner of my eye, the sudden silence. One of the SEALs, the tallest one with a scar across his jawline, froze mid-joke. His eyes locked onto the tattoo like it had grabbed his throat. He didn't say a word. Didn't need to, because he knew what that symbol meant. He knew exactly who I was, or at least what I'd once been. You see that hawk? That wasn't just ink. It was an emblem worn by a unit so deep in the shadows we didn't even have a name, just a frequency and a call sign. We were ghost reconnaissance, eyes and ears in places satellites couldn't reach. The kind of work that never made headlines. But if you knew the signs, you knew. I didn't look at him, just kept walking to my lane, stepping past the stairs. The other shooters were still cracking jokes, oblivious. But I saw it, the way his face drained of color. He whispered something to his buddy, who just shrugged, not understanding. I took my time setting up, pulled out the bolt, checked the chamber, clicked the bipod into place. My hands moved with that old rhythm. You don't forget it. Not when the routine once meant the difference between coming home or bleeding out in sand too far from help. "Ma'am," one of the younger guys offered. "Might want to start with the closer targets. That 100-yard steal gives people trouble." He smiled like he was being helpful. His tone, that same gently patronizing one I'd heard 1,000 times from people who thought they knew better. "Thanks," I said flatly. He lingered, watching me lay out the rifle. "Those targets are tough if you're not used to recoil." I looked up dead calm. "I'll manage." Then he walked off, snickering with his buddies. Still clueless. But the guy who saw the tattoo? He wasn't laughing anymore. He hadn't moved from where he stood, eyes pinned to me like a man watching a ghost walk out of a memory. I set my scope. Wind was low, left to right. Not enough to throw the shot off unless you were sloppy. And I'm never sloppy. I chambered 5 rounds. Took a breath. Slipped behind the rifle. And then, bang, 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 bang. 5 shots. Barely a heartbeat between them. I stood up, wiped the dust from my palms, and walked back to the bench like I'd just been adjusting zero. No victory pose. No high five. Then the range master called out from his shack. Target lane 4, center bowl. Grouping confirmed. 5-star pattern. The place fell silent. Every damn shooter on that line turned. I didn't bother looking back, but I heard it in the hush. The kind of silence that follows when the truth finally slaps the room quiet. I didn't need to explain myself. I didn't need to lecture anyone. My rifle had done the talking, and it spoke with authority. They didn't know what to do with me after that. That's the funny thing about silence. It's a vacuum. It demands to be filled. But that moment, no one dared speak. Not the kid who offered me advice. Not his buddy who'd made the recoil joke. Not even the one with the scar, who clearly knew. Especially not him. Instead, they watched. Some pretended not to, fiddling with their sights or faking conversations. Others didn't bother. They stared outright. At me, at the target still hanging like a confession, and at the pattern. The star. 5 rounds, perfect spread. Clean enough to thread a matchstick through the center. Now, let me be clear. That star pattern wasn't just a fancy grouping. It was a signature. A whisper in steel. There are only a handful of people alive who can pull it off cold, and fewer who have under pressure. It's called the sightline star. It's a myth to most. A mark of silent professionals to the few who know. And a warning to those smart enough to shut up and listen. That's when the door to the office creaked open. I knew something had shifted, knew it before I saw him. Colonel Thomas Beckett, retired Special Operations Group Commander. 6'3", silver hair clipped close, frame like a coiled spring. Even in jeans and a golf polo, the man looked like a war plan ready to unfold. He stepped into the range like gravity followed him. And for a second, everything stopped again. Afternoon, he said casually, but his voice carried weight. The kind that makes you straighten up even if you're not in uniform. The scarred seal, the one who'd recognized my tattoo, snapped to attention. Literally. Beckett raised a hand and nodded, then scanned the range. His eyes landed on me fast. Not because I was loud or obvious, but because some instincts don't dull with time. He knew exactly where the center of gravity was. And it was me. He walked over. No small talk. No pleasantries. Instead, he stopped just outside my lane and looked down at the steel target through a pair of battered binoculars. Then he whistled. God almighty, he said. I thought they retired that pattern with the Ghost Range program. I met his gaze, calm and quiet. Some of us kept the lights on. He didn't smile, but something in his jaw relaxed, like a memory had just been confirmed. You're Riley Quinn, he said. Not a question. You're looking at her. He nodded slowly, like he was processing the weight of a name he'd heard but never expected to see attached to a civilian shooter in dusty denim. The scarred seal cleared his throat and approached cautiously. Sir, he said to Beckett, eyes flicking to me. She trained with Unit Sierra 10, right? Beckett didn't look at him, just kept his eyes on me. She didn't train with Sierra 10, he said. She taught them. That got quiet, fast. I sighed and set my rifle down gently. Not for show, just out of habit. She'd done her part. You here to collect me, Colonel? I asked. Or just passing through for chilly and awkward reunions? He chuckled at that. Dry, dusty humor. The kind that came from too many briefings and too few truths. Neither, he said. I heard rumors. About a civilian shooter out shooting half the boys out of Bragg. I didn't believe it until I saw the pattern. His eyes dropped to my forearm. You shouldn't be wearing that ink out in the open. I shrugged. Didn't plan to. Just got hot. Hot gets people killed, Riley. Sometimes, so does forgetting. That shut him up. Just for a second. Because Beckett wasn't just there on a whim. I knew the look. The way his fingers tapped his thigh. The way his eyes flicked over the others on the line. This wasn't a coincidence. So what is this? I asked. You bringing in ghosts again? Thought we were all ghosts of ghosts by now. He looked toward the field. No, not yet. But something's changing. And they're looking for people who still shoot analog. Who feel the wind, not just read it. Who don't need 20 drones and satellite clearance to make decisions. He turned back to me. They're looking for people like you. I gave a short, humorless laugh. I thought people like me weren't real anymore. Most aren't, he replied. But you are. One of the SEALs stepped forward. Same kid who'd told me to start on the short range. His voice was careful now. Ma'am, I didn't know. I looked at him and gave the smallest nod. Didn't need to. But now you do. He swallowed, nodded, and stepped back. Beckett sighed. I know you don't like crowds. And you sure as hell don't like speeches. But I've got a team waiting in Prescott. They want to talk. Not command. Just talk. I stared down the line at my target. 5 shots. 5 truths. I hadn't missed a single one. Not today, I said. But maybe sometime soon. He accepted that without argument. That's how you know someone respects you. They don't push. Until then, he said, offering a rare nod. Keep shooting, sideline. That was the last time anyone said that name out loud. But it stuck. Because that day, something shifted at the range. Not just for me. For every hotshot who thought skill could be measured by swagger. For every loudmouth who thought quiet meant weak. They saw what happens when experience loads the chamber. And they learned that some legends don't come in combat boots or medals. Some walk quiet, carry old scars, and hit dead center every single time. After Beckett left, things didn't go back to normal. Not really. You don't fire a shot like that, get recognized by a man like him, and expect to fade back into the background. The air at the range had changed. Thicker somehow. Like everyone had realized something sacred had happened, but didn't know how to talk about it. The younger SEALs stayed quiet after that. No more snide remarks. No more smirking glances. Just respectful nods and silent observation. And honestly, that was more uncomfortable than the mockery. I packed up slow. Not because I was dragging it out, but because there was something familiar in the stillness now. Like I'd stepped back into a room I hadn't entered since the world turned upside down and left me walking out with too many memories and no orders. They used to call me Sightline back then. That name meant something. Not just a call sign, but a role. I was the forward element. The one sent ahead of the advance to set overwatch, tag targets, and, if needed, pull the trigger no one else could. Clean, calculated, and cold. You want the truth? I wasn't always quiet. I wasn't always calm. But I'd learned, over time, that silence holds more than speech ever could. That stillness is power. And when you've pulled the trigger from 700 yards and watched lives change, or end, you start to understand the weight of noise. I zipped the rifle case, slung it over my shoulder, and nodded at the range master on my way out. Same lane next time? He asked, trying not to look too eager. I gave him a wry half-smile. If it's still standing. He laughed, but it came out nervous. The Bronco's engine coughed before turning over. I let it idle while I sat behind the wheel, watching the heat ripple off the gravel. That's when I noticed someone in my side mirror. It was the scarred SEAL, the one who'd recognized the tattoo. He approached with his hands up, not in surrender, but in respect. He was careful, deliberate, like someone walking up on a sleeping predator. Sorry to bother you, he said. Name's Dax, Petty Officer First Class. I didn't respond. I've heard stories, he went on, about someone at Mosul Ridge. 7 confirmed shots, no spotter, in crosswinds. I stared straight ahead. That you? I took a breath, kept my voice low. Those stories weren't about glory. They were about necessity. He nodded, jaw tightening. Didn't mean it as a compliment. Meant it as acknowledgement. That got my attention. I glanced over at him. He looked away, then back. I was a green recruit when those stories made the rounds. We thought they were myth, but they made us believe someone out there was watching. Made us feel safer. A long pause. I saw the way you shot today, he said. I've never seen anything like it. I finally spoke. You probably have. Just didn't know what you were looking at. He chuckled softly, eyes dropping to his boots. You're probably right. Then he pulled something from his pocket, a small patch. Not official issue. Just a black cloth square, stitched with a single silver eye over crossed rifles. He handed it to me. We made this, he said. A tribute to that story. To that shooter. Gave one to every man in my unit who graduated through long-range qualifications. I took the patch and turned it over in my hands. Simple, humble, unofficial, but real. I nodded once. Thank you. He saluted, sharp and respectful, then turned and walked away. I sat there in the Bronco for a long time after that. Long enough that the engine began to sputter from the heat. Eventually, I rolled out, dust trailing behind me like a ghost refusing to vanish. Back home, I pinned the patch to the wall above my workbench. Right next to a map with no names, no roads, just elevation lines and scribbled coordinates from a dozen missions no one talks about anymore. And for the first time in a long while, I stared at that map and didn't feel numb. Because something was shifting, not just in the world, but in me. Later that night, I was cleaning my rifle when I got the text. Unknown number. No name. Just a string of digits. Ridgeview Depot. 0900. Bring the 308. Eyes only. It was old protocol. Not used in a decade. Not since the last mission that had nearly taken everything from me. I stared at it for a moment. Then I texted back. Copy. When I woke up the next morning, the world had that eerie stillness you only get in the desert right before it decides to remind you who's boss. Wind barely touched the pines outside my cabin. The clouds were stalled, gray and heavy, like a ceiling that hadn't made up its mind about falling. I packed light. The 308 precision rifle rode in its canvas sleeve, same one it always had. Same patches on the side. Same bloodstain near the bottom hem I never washed out. I didn't need to bring much. Just the rifle, a change of clothes, and my mind sharp enough to catch a fly in a dust storm. Ridgeview Depot was an old logistics station tucked behind the bluff, where the high desert leveled off before the San Francisco peaks started their slow, jagged rise. It hadn't been an active military post in years, at least not officially. But you don't grow up in ghost ops without learning the difference between decommissioned and quiet. I pulled in at 0857. No one in sight. Then I saw the glint. Upper catwalk, half hidden behind rusted railings. Spotter. High angle. Waiting. I parked the Bronco, slung my rifle bag over my shoulder, and walked slow. Deliberate. When I got to the main gate, it creaked open before I touched it. A figure stepped out of the shadows. Gray hair under a boonie cap. Worn field jacket. Boots shined in a way that only came from habit, not pride. Still walk like a shooter, he said. Still hiding in catwalks, Lieutenant? I replied. Old habits. Lucas Grant. My last spotter. We'd run missions together in terrain that made other units ask for satellite backup. Back then, he'd been the one reading wind and whispering dope while I squeezed the trigger. Now, his face looked more like creased leather, but his eyes? Still sharp enough to read my soul in a half second. He motioned me in. Thought you were out, I said as we walked past the old shipping containers and half-buried concrete bunkers. I was, he said. Until 2 months ago. What happened? He stopped by a folding table with a thermos and a single manila folder. We lost a team in Estonia. Supposed to be a joint recon op routine. In and out. He tapped the folder. But the way they were taken out? Surgical. Silent. Precision kill zones like I haven't seen since. He looked at me. Since you ran Overwatch on Vulture Gulf. That name hit me like a punch to the ribs. You think it's one of ours? I asked. We don't know. But someone's resurrecting ghost protocols. Someone who knows our playbook. Not just how we operated, but how we thought. I opened the folder. Photos. Debrief reports. Shot trajectories mapped on digital overlays. Each one told the same story. Long-range hits. Patterns of movement interrupted with perfect timing. Not random. Not chaos. But intent. It was like reading a twisted mirror of my old work. They're calling the shooter Spectre, Lucas said. We think it's an alias, not a team. Just one. I closed the folder. Why call me in? Because Spectre's shooting like you. Using drills you wrote. Techniques you only ever taught to a handful of people. And most of them are either dead or locked behind higher clearance than God. I looked at him, really looked at him. You think it's one of ours gone dark? I think, he said slowly. It's someone who trained under you. Someone with a grudge. Someone trying to make a point. I felt the weight settle across my shoulders like a familiar pack. And what exactly do you want from me? Lucas didn't hesitate. I want you to find them. And stop them. I took a breath. Let it settle into my chest. It wasn't anger I felt. It wasn't even fear. It was betrayal. Because if someone out there was using the sightline methods to make ghosts out of good men, then they weren't just attacking old allies. They were desecrating a legacy I'd bled for. Lucas handed me a folded sheet, an op map, marked with red X's across rural northern Arizona and parts of Utah. Small outposts, logistics hubs, tactical relay stations, all hit quietly over the last 3 weeks. Local law chalked it up to cartel interference, he said. But the signatures, that star grouping showed up at a training camp in Moab. Unofficial site, but used by off-duty personnel. 3 men dead. A cold shiver worked its way through me. He's leaving marks, I said quietly. He wants someone to notice. Exactly, Lucas said. And someone who can respond. I looked at the last X on the map. An airstrip just south of Navajo Point. I'll need a drone. Passive recon. No active pinging. And I want full access to Ghost Net logs for the last 60 days. Lucas nodded. Already prepped. Your clearance was reinstated this morning. I raised an eyebrow. You forged my signature again? He smirked. You're welcome. As I packed up, he hesitated. One more thing. He reached into his coat and handed me a patch. Blackfield. Single silver hawk over a triangle of wire. New programs spinning up. Legacy instructors. Shadow work. They want you on it. Train the next gen. I looked down at the patch, fingers running over the stitch lines. Let me clean up this mess first. He nodded. Figured you'd say that. I threw my rifle bag into the Bronco, map tucked under my arm. As I drove off down the ridge road, dust pluming in the rear view, I felt it again. That pull in my chest I hadn't felt in years. The call of unfinished business. And this time, it was personal. By the time I reached the overlook near Navajo Point, the sun was bleeding out behind the canyon wall, casting the landscape in that ghost gold color that always made the desert feel like a memory trying to forget itself. I parked beneath a rocky outcrop, hiked the last few hundred yards with my pack and rifle slung over my shoulder. Every footstep landed on instinct, heels rolled soft, weight distributed evenly. The ground here was loose, sandstone and scrub brush, but I didn't make a sound. It was like stepping back into my old skin. I'd set up on ridgelines like this before. In northern Kandahar, in the forests outside Kalmar, in a wind-blown pass in the Hindu Kush where silence had kept me alive and distance had been the only friend I trusted. The overlook gave me a clean view of the abandoned airstrip 2 clicks below. The facility hadn't been active since the late 90s, and even then it was more of a refueling ghost stop for low-visibility missions. Now, it was just cracked pavement and broken hangars. But the ghost net ping Lucas had pulled up said otherwise. Someone had been here 4 nights ago and left a very distinct calling card. A spent shell casing, polished, stamped with a mark I knew far too well, the 3-strike symbol. A simplified, unauthorized version of the sightline star. It wasn't used in any official capacity. It was personal. It was mine. Something I used to scratch into casings as a quiet talisman during ops. Something I showed to one student. One recruit who came up through the GhostNet training compound in Virginia. Name redacted. Record sealed. Only thing I remember is that we called him Vance. And he never missed. Problem was, Vance was supposed to be dead. He'd gone dark during a covert op in coastal Georgia. Never recovered. Declared Kia. But if he was the one dropping star groupings and marked casings in my old haunts, then either the report was wrong, or Vance came back from the dead with a vendetta. I deployed my spotting scope and waited. Desert wind whispered through the canyon. Low, hot, and dry. The kind that carries words if you know how to listen. And then, I heard it. Not a voice. A pattern. Rhythmic crunches on gravel. 2 clicks. Pause. 3 clicks. Steady breath. Exhale. A sniper's walk. He was here. I stayed low, watching the shadows near the north end of the airstrip. No moonlight yet. Just starlight and thermal bleed in the distance. And there, between the broken fuselage of an old cargo plane, I caught the faintest shimmer. Not a person. Not yet. Just motion. A ripple in the dark. Then the beam hit me. Laser rangefinder. Someone had eyes on me. I didn't flinch. Didn't breathe heavy. Just reached up slow and tapped the side of my scope 3 times in the rhythm he'd used when we trained. 1 to call range, 2 for wind, 3 for alignment. I returned the signal. And after a moment, he answered. The dot vanished. He was watching me. Testing me. Confirming. And that's when I realized. This wasn't a standoff. This was an invitation. I broke position, shifted 10 meters east, and came up on a second perch, crosswind to the ridge. If he wanted to talk, he could come to me. But instead, he left something. By the time I worked my way down at dawn, no sign of him, just a silver thermos sitting atop a cinder block, a single white note tucked underneath. Did you really think they'd let us fade out quiet? And underneath it, Brevard, Thursday, dusk. No signature. Didn't need one. I stood there a long while. Because Brevard wasn't just another meet point. It was the old Joint Forces facility where GhostNet had run its final unofficial training class. The same one where Vance had earned his mark. The same one where I'd stood in front of 10 shooters and said the words I'd only said once in my life. If you're lucky, you'll never have to use what I teach you. But if you do, you won't miss. And now one of them was out there, using my voice, my training, and my mark to send messages I didn't understand yet. This wasn't just about a rogue operator. This was about legacy, and someone out there was rewriting mine in blood. Brevard used to be a radar calibration site. Now it was a skeleton, chain-link fencing, sun-bleached buildings, and silence. The kind of place the world forgets on purpose. I got there early, parked off the grid and hiked in on foot, rifle strapped, but no scope attached. This wasn't about firepower. It was about seeing face to face who I thought was dead, now resurrected with questions only ghosts could ask. Dusk draped the compound in a slow, golden wash when I saw him. Vance. Thinner. Older. But unmistakable. Same posture. Same 1,000-yard stare that sees more than it should. He didn't raise a weapon. Just leaned against a rusted antenna tower like we were two vets meeting at a bar. You kept the rhythm, he said. You kept my mark. He didn't deny it. Why? I asked. Because they buried us before we stopped breathing. GhostNet was never meant to die. It was meant to evolve. I just got there before they were ready. I stepped closer, slowly. You've been hitting our own. Good men. Quiet assets. Why? He looked up. No malice. Just conviction. Because they forgot what we were trained for. You told us to shoot with purpose. To stop threats no one else saw. I'm doing that. By killing ghosts. I snapped. By waking them up. There it was. The mission. Not revenge. Not chaos. Correction. He was turning our doctrine into doctrine against us. You want me to join you? I said. He nodded once. I stared at him a long moment. Remembered the eager kid who memorized wind charts for fun. The sniper who swore never to fire unless the shot meant saving someone. He wasn't that man anymore. I turned away. No, I said. Silence hung between us like a blade. I'll see you again, he said quietly. And when you do, you'll understand. I didn't answer. I walked. But I knew this wasn't the end. This was the first shot in a war that no one would see coming. I didn't sleep much after Brevard. Back home, the quiet wasn't comforting anymore. It was loud, filled with unfinished thoughts and phantom echoes. I knew Vance was serious. Knew he believed what he was doing was right. And maybe, in some twisted way, it was, if you stripped away the blood. But I also knew something he didn't. He wasn't the only one waking up ghosts. By noon the next day, I had secure comms open with Colonel Beckett and Lucas Grant. We met in a gravel pit turned forward staging area 2 hours outside Winslow. Vance is alive, I said bluntly. And he's not just freelancing. He's on a mission. Beckett didn't blink. You sure it's not mental break? No. This is strategy. Every hit has meaning. He's targeting ops centers, not people randomly. Each one was connected to the wind down of GhostNet. Lucas tapped a map. We missed it. He's following the drawdown paperwork. If it's on the decommission list, it's a target. Beckett swore under his breath. I nodded. He thinks he's finishing what we couldn't. That if GhostNet's legacy is going to die, it'll die with impact. Beckett paced. We can't go public. Not with an internal rogue. Too messy. Too political. So we do it the old way, I said. Quiet. Clean. Final. Lucas hesitated. You're saying take him out? No. I said, locking eyes with him. I'm saying stop him. Whatever that looks like. Beckett looked at me hard. You think you can do that? I thought of Vance's face. The calm in his voice. The steadiness of a man who hadn't hesitated once. I trained him. That means stopping him is my responsibility. Beckett sighed. Then we need to get ahead of him. Fast. He handed me a folder marked Iron Tree. Next target. High-value comm relay post near Page, Arizona. You'll have one shot, he said. Don't waste it. I don't, I replied. And I meant it. Page, Arizona. Sunset painted the mesas blood orange when I hiked up the ridge overlooking the Iron Tree relay station. It was barely more than a squat concrete hub and 2 towers blinking quietly against the darkening sky. I set up fast. Rifle prone, scope clean, wind steady out of the southeast. Everything felt familiar. Too familiar. Like Vance wanted me here. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. And then movement. One silhouette. Slow. Purposeful. He didn't sneak. He walked, like a man making a point. Vance. He stopped 50 yards from the relay fence, pulled something from his coat, and set it gently against the doorframe. A transmitter. Not an explosive. A message. I lowered my rifle. Through the scope, I watched as he looked directly up toward my ridge. He knew. He couldn't see me, no way. But he knew. He raised a hand. 2 fingers to his temple. a half salute we used to give when breaking Overwatch. Then he walked back into the desert. I moved in after sunset. The transmitter was still live, cycling a single message on loop. They're erasing us, one ghost at a time. Will you stand silent? No name. No threat. Just a challenge. Back at camp, Lucas was furious. You had a clean shot. No, I said. I had a line of sight. Not a shot. Beckett studied me. He's not running. He's waiting, I said. For what? For me to answer. 3 days passed. No new strikes. No new signals. Just that same message bouncing through shadow channels. They're erasing us, one ghost at a time. Vance had gone silent again, but it wasn't retreat, it was rhythm. He was setting tempo, like a sniper breathing between shots. And me? I was the only one still listening. Then it came. A secure courier delivered a flash drive. No return address. No trace. Just a label, sight line. I plugged it into a burner laptop. Video. 1 minute long. Drone footage. It showed me, at the ridge above Iron Tree. My rifle. My perch. From above. He'd had eyes on me the whole time. Then the feed cut to a still image, a location tag in Nevada. A decommissioned GhostNet safe house. One I hadn't seen in years. And a message in plain text. One last shot. Come finish it. Alone. Lucas slammed his hand on the table. It's bait. I know. Beckett stood stone still. You going? I nodded. I have to. He eyed me. You planning to take the shot? I looked down at my hands, steady as ever. If he gives me no choice. Beckett didn't argue. Just handed me a key. Locker 17, Black Ridge Armory. Old loadout. You'll want it. I took it without a word. That night, before leaving, I walked the range behind my cabin. Set up 5 steel targets. Spread wide. Wind low. Bang. 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 5 stars. Still had it. But for the first time, I wasn't sure that was enough. The safe house sat in a dead stretch of Nevada, tucked between old mining roads and jagged hills that didn't welcome company. No lights. No power. Just walls that remembered things no one spoke of anymore. I arrived at dawn. No rifle out. Just a sidearm. I wasn't here to win a firefight. I was here to settle something older than both of us. He was already there. Sitting inside. Same posture. Same calm. Only difference was the weight in his eyes. He looked like a man who'd carried too much for too long and decided to become the load instead. You came, he said. I always do. A long silence passed between us. Then he stood. No weapon drawn. Just a battered patch in his hand. GhostNet's last class emblem. He held it up. They gave us the tools, Riley. Then buried them. They gave us purpose, I said. And we chose what to do with it. He nodded, slowly. I chose to remind them. By making targets of your own? I asked. You're proving their point. I'm proving we still exist. No, I said. You're proving why they were afraid we did. He looked down. And for a moment, I saw the kid again. The one who memorized wind patterns. The one who asked if missing meant more than killing. I raised my sidearm. Slowly. I don't want to do this, I said. He didn't flinch. I know. And then he dropped the patch to the ground and stepped back. Arms raised. No fight. No final shot. He was done. I exhaled, hand trembling slightly as I lowered the weapon. Why now? I asked. Because I needed you to see it, he said. Not the message. The weight. You're the only one left who'd understand. Outside, a low thrum broke the silence. Beckett's team. I gave them one signal, stand down. Vance sat again, closing his eyes. I'll go quiet. But not because I lost. No, I said, stepping closer. Because you remembered who taught you what the silence was for. We brought him in. No cuffs. No fanfare. Just the end of a long story that no one else would ever read. Later, Beckett offered a commendation. I refused it. I didn't win, I said. I just prevented more loss. They shut down GhostNet for good after that. Buried the last files. Quiet. But legends? They don't end. They echo. Sometimes in dust. Sometimes in wind. And sometimes in 5 perfect shots across a forgotten range, still whispering the truth that when real skill speaks, all talk must fall quiet.